Flores says he will never feel safe again. He's not the only one. Arivaca residents remember Ford came to this bar to gather information on her victims.
And she was also, espousing some opinions about the border, and she was just kind of scary.
Shauna Ford once belonged to the Minutemen militia, a group of armed citizens who search for illegal immigrants in border states. She was expelled for radical views, but prosecutors say she then established her own group. There are dozens of active citizen militia groups in Arizona. Some Hispanic residents say they feel intimidated. Isabel Garcia has received death threats.
We have grown hatred and discrimination and bias against Latinos like you have no idea in the state, beginning in the mid-1990s. We allowed the vigilantes to come in. The media gave them full distribution of their messages of hate.
We asked border authorities about regular citizens taking up patrolling in their own hands.
We've never had issues with them, as far as I know. Never had any issues with them. They're just trying to help secure the borders. I mean, with this situation, it's so much. I don't think there's enough Border Patrol agents.
But many say there is a thin line between citizens helping border authorities and those who hunt down for immigrants. Mónica Villamizar, Al Jazeera, Arizona.
David Foster with the headlines on Al Jazeera. Major General Suleiman Mahmoud, commander of the Libyan army in Tobruk, has told us that he and his soldiers are backing the protesters against Muammar Gaddafi. It's a sign the army may well be turning away from the Libyan leader. Meanwhile, Italy is describing reports of 1,000 having been killed in Libya as believable. On Tuesday night, Gaddafi vowed to fight to the last drop of blood. But the Italian foreign minister says Gaddafi's lost control of the east of the country and is warning of an exodus of biblical proportions. Our correspondent, Huda Abdulhamid, has managed to get into Libya, near the border with Egypt. This is what she sent us.
I'm here in Tobruk, about 140 kilometers away from the border between Libya and Egypt. Now, at the border, I saw hundreds of people fleeing Libya with everything they own, basically mattresses, sinks, washing machines, everything they own. Those were people who are actually Egyptian workers in Libya who came here to save money, and now they had to flee. Now, they described very violent scenes. They said that people were being killed in Baida and Benghazi, that they say happened a couple of days ago. One man told me there was a bloodbath. They did say that the situation is still very chaotic and people are extremely scared, especially after the speech of Muammar Gaddafi. People thought that would be a threat and they thought that they better leave now before waiting to see what would happen next.
A fire at an Interior Ministry building in Egypt may have been started by police holding a protest. The blaze is thought to have been started when the protesters, calling for better conditions, set fire to cars. Has been put out, but 4 people were hurt. Security's high on the agenda for Egypt's new cabinet, which met for the first time. 10 new ministers were appointed on Tuesday. In New Zealand, search and rescue teams are still looking for about 300 people missing after an earthquake shook Christchurch. At least 75 people died and the death toll is likely to rise. I'll be back at the top of the hour with the News Hour. That's after Riz Khan here on Al Jazeera.
Hello and welcome. Britain may have condemned the violent attacks on Libya's protesters in the past few days, but does it have blood on its hands for selling weapons to Libya in the first place? The infamous 2004 deal in the desert handshake between former British Prime Minister Tony Blair and Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi was not only an attempt to welcome the North African colonel into the international community, but more importantly for Britain, paved the way for lucrative business between the two countries. The deal saw the Anglo-Dutch oil company Shell sign an exploration agreement with Libya worth up to $1 billion. 3 years later, oil giant British Petroleum signed a $900 million offshore oil exploration deal with Colonel Gaddafi. British arms companies have also profited. In the third quarter of 2010 alone, according to the Campaign Against Arms Trade, The UK licensed over $6 million worth of ammunition to Libya, including sniper rifles and crowd control ammunition, which is suspected of being used against protesters in the current uprising. On Monday, the British government cancelled 8 arms exports licenses for Libya. So today we ask, how guilty is the West of double standards when it comes to dealing with Arab regimes? Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments by sending an SMS or an email. Well, joining me in Washington, D.C. is Ibrahim Saad, Secretary General of the Anti-Gaddafi Group, the National Front for the Salvation of Libya. Mr. Saad was Libya's representative to the United Nations in the 1970s. In London, I'm joined by Sir Richard Dalton, a former British ambassador to Libya. He's also an associate fellow on the Middle East and North African program at the International Affairs Organization, Chatham House. Also in DC is Hafid Al-Ghouel, a Libyan-American analyst based in DC, who's a leading critic of the Gaddafi government. I welcome you all to the show. Hafid Al-Ghouel, I'll start with you, sir. Muammar Gaddafi has been seen on Libyan TV, state TV, with a tough message, essentially threatening the protesters. And he said he's willing to martyr for his country, be a martyr for his country, and he's not intending to leave. How do you think that's going to resonate with the people in Libya right now?
I think the same way that his son's speech resonated a couple of days ago. This is a clear threat by a dictator. I think that his statement was very clearly coming from a deranged, afraid dictator who's trying to project an image of strength and control. I think everybody sees through that. And it is, in some ways, I think it is good for the Libyan, for the international community to see the kind of personality that the Libyan people have been dealing with for the last 42 years. And the craziness and the thuggery of the system that they are under. You
have family there. What are they telling you about what's going on?
I have my entire family there. Many Libyans have their entire families there, and they are. You have different reports coming from different family members. They're scared. They are confused. They don't know what's going on. They are all have sympathy for the pro-democracy protesters. They all are trying to do their bit as much as they can. So there is the one thing that is very clear, despite 42 years of Gaddafi trying to fragment the Libyan society and turn it against each other through tribal and other ways, today the entire population stands united against him and demanding one thing, for him to step down.
Well, Mr. Ibrahim Saad, I want to welcome you in, sir, and I know that you've been very critical of the international community not playing a more active part. What should be done right now then?
Well, I think it's very late for the international community, but I would like to see the Security Council convene very quickly and take a resolution which swiftly allow the international community to help protecting the civilian inside Libya. The whole population of the Libyans facing a brutal regime, using all kinds of weapons against its own people, using even mercenaries. And that's crime against humanity, that's crimes of war, that's go to annihilating the whole population to stay in power. And I think the international community is committing a big mistake by not acting very soon to this brutal regime. It's a massacre, and it's